While others were starving for 3 days straight, this man had already built himself a shelter. He thought he'd stay just for a few days, but an unexpected, prolonged snowfall turned a temporary stay into an entire winter. The California forest, after a heavy snowfall, was at its coldest time of the year. Amao, just over 30 years old, had been kicked out by his beautiful wife. With nowhere else to go, he had to live in the wild, passing by a babbling brook. He finally stopped at an open clearing. 3 clustered pine trees before him became the home he pinned his hopes on. But the load bearing of the 3 trees was unstable, so he quickly dug a half-meter deep pit in one corner of the ground. Then he gathered a dry log by hand and inserted it into the hole he had dug to make the post more stable. Amao picked up many stones of various sizes from the creek. He filled the pit with them as well, then packed it layer by layer with soil to stabilize it. In addition, he set up tripods around the main support post for extra reinforcement. After all, if anything went wrong in the wild, no one could help him. Winter forests are rich in deadwood resources. Amao easily found suitable logs. After debarking the logs, he tied them to the pine trees to serve as the base frame of the treehouse. The solitude of winter made Amao shiver, but he couldn't tell if it was from the cold or from inside his heart. He quickly lit a campfire, and the burning flames finally brought some warmth. Then he made himself a cup of coffee. At that moment, nothing could be more satisfying than a hot cup of coffee. But Amao didn't rest for long. Another heavy snowstorm swept in. It was as if nature itself was eager to see his new home. He made a ladder to make the upcoming construction easier. Deadwood was everywhere around his shelter. He simply gathered and used it as needed. In a single effort, he collected many uniformly sized pine logs. Now he could nail them to the base frame. Amao didn't bring much equipment when he left home, but luckily he brought enough nails to last a lifetime. He could freely hammer the framework together, making it very sturdy. But the increasing cold forced Amao to stop and warm his frostbitten hands. Yet he had no choice but to continue building. Time passed bit by bit, while snowflakes kept falling from the sky. With sheer determination, he finished laying the last floorboard. The solidity was enough to meet Amao's daily needs. The treehouse's long structure frame was built in the same way. With prior experience, this didn't take Amao much time. Considering that piled up snow in winter would be bad for the treehouse, he decided to build a gabled roof structure. He crafted a vertical support at the roof's front end, allowing cross beams to fit snugly on top. This way, everything could be securely joined together. He also carved grooves into the beams to further reinforce the frame. This made it solid enough. As you can see, the structure could fully support Amao alone. Even with future snow accumulation, it wouldn't pose a threat to his treehouse. Next, he installed the roof rafters all at once. There were plenty of pine needles on the forest floor. They were perfect as natural windproof insulation materials. Amao gathered a large amount in one go. Using them was also very simple. Just layer them between the logs used for the walls, stacking them higher and higher, although the result didn't look refined. The airtight walls were the best gift the forest could offer Amao. He used the same method for the rest of the walls. To ensure the treehouse construction went smoothly, he decided to take advantage before the walls were fully completed. He first laid down a waterproof tarp for the roof, since he didn't have the help of a lift. Eventually, after constantly adjusting the ladder, he managed to finish covering the roof with the tarp, just as Amao completed the waterproofing. Snowflakes began to fall again. Now, under the protection of the tarp, he could safely continue building the walls. Before leaving home, Amao brought some insulation. He cut an opening for the chimney. Then he made the same hole on the waterproof tarp on the roof. Finally, he used sealing glue to fix it in place. This way, the chimney could function without sacrificing insulation. Amao was very efficient in construction. He quickly moved on to building the front wall. By now, the weather had turned even colder. His beard had tiny icicles forming on it. So for maximum warmth, Amao decided not to install any windows. After all, no one wants to be woken up by freezing cold at night. Just before nightfall, Amao finished building the shelter's walls. Although the door wasn't installed yet, the tightly sealed walls would keep him from developing hypothermia. The next day, the entire world outside was covered in thick snow. Amao had just survived the coldest night of his life. The first thing he did upon waking was quickly gather deadwood and make a door for the shelter. Now he wouldn't be exposed to the cold wind and snow. To ensure a good night's sleep, he also used leftover pine wood to build himself a bed with the bed frame completed. His shelter now finally felt like a real home. Then he installed the family's old fireplace, which brought warm, flickering firelight. Even though it was still storming outside, Amao couldn't feel any cold inside. He then braved the snowstorm to collect more firewood and returned to the warm shelter. After adding logs to the fireplace, he was finally able to cook dinner and treat himself to a proper meal. Watching Amao devour his food heartily, one could see he was full and content, though there was a hint of melancholy in it. With his stomach full, he could finally sleep soundly tonight, without fear of being disturbed by wind or snow. Winter in California was blanketed by deep snow, like a dream straight out of a fairy tale. This time, Amao brought back some gear from town for the winter. After a difficult hike through the snow, he finally returned to his long-lost shelter. Opening the door to the shelter, the interior still looked humble, but it was filled with familiar warmth. This time, he came back to improve his home so he could survive the winter more safely and comfortably. Since Amao had never seen such heavy snow before, he couldn't help but worry about the durability of the shelter he built with so much effort. So he shaved down both ends of a log and nailed them onto the roof beams, adding more support to the roof as much as possible. Because the original door was hastily made, he bought a proper hinge this time. Opening and closing the door became much smoother. To address the issue of lighting indoors, Amao decided to install 2 windows in the shelter. Though the windows were small, the light they let in was enough to brighten the entire interior. After finishing the windows, Amao looked at the messy floor and fell into deep thought. Luckily, he had brought some cotton cloth with him. He nailed them neatly across the floor, which made the place look much cleaner. Before placing the fireplace, he first laid an insulation mat underneath it to prevent heat damage to the wooden floor. After all, no one wants their hard work to go up in flames. By the time the fireplace was fully installed, night had already fallen across the forest. Amao quickly gathered firewood and lit the warm fireplace. Tonight's dinner was quite hearty. Even though Amao had never been a great cook, he was still content with this self-sufficient life, and that's what mattered most. Even living alone in the wilderness, one can still live a romantic life. Tonight, he can finally get a good night's sleep. The next day's weather remains cold and gloomy. The warmth inside the cabin causes a layer of fog on the window. It's clear that Amao slept well last night. The first thing he did was return to his warm shelter. Today's breakfast is scrambled eggs with sausage. Though it doesn't look very appealing, it provides him with plenty of high-quality protein, combined with whole wheat bread and vitamin-rich tomatoes. Amao is energized for the entire day. As for daily water needs, he just needs to scoop a pot of stream water at his doorstep, place it over the fireplace and wait for it to boil. Then brew a pot of pine needle coffee. Amao is truly thriving in the wilderness. On snowy days, the best thing is to stay in bed and sleep in, but Amao chose not to be lazy. Instead, he nailed cotton linen fabric onto the walls. This prevents moss from falling through the wall cracks, and also helps insulate the shelter to some extent. Done. Afterwards, the entire interior looks much tidier, but it's still missing a dining table, which makes eating and drinking very inconvenient. So Amao gathered some lumber. He first drilled a hole into a log section, then inserted a carved stick into it. This gave him a handy mallet. Now he can easily split the logs. Assembling them creates a tabletop, and attaching legs using lotus leaves. He can fold the table when not in use. This way it doesn't take up too much indoor space. Busy times always pass quickly, and the happiest time of Amau's day is dinner time. Dinner is a premium filet steak, topped with herbs, to bring out the steak's aroma. The steak doesn't need long to cook. Medium rare is just right for Amau's taste. Served with freshly grilled pancakes, it's truly a gourmet delight. But before eating, he carefully decorates the room to create a romantic vibe. Dining alone can still be romantic, but if there were a wild woman, that would be even better. Then he enjoys this unique, personal dinner of his. Last winter, Amau built his first home in the wild. Now that the winter snow has melted, everything revives with spring's arrival, bursting with renewed vitality when we see Amau again. His haircut makes him look refreshed and carefree, completely different from before. After surviving a cold and long winter, his treehouse still retains its original form, but time has taken its toll, causing some wear and tear. Therefore, Amau decides to renovate his treehouse completely to make the repair work smoother. Amau first needs to build a large wooden ladder. Luckily, this time he brought a drill, saving him a lot of effort. During construction, the ladder is also very sturdy. Now, he can safely fix the roof's waterproofing. Life in the wild is full of freedom. Amau takes advantage of the sunny weather to gather a sack of free moss. The old moss had already withered, losing its original function. So he needed to replace it with fresh moss. The oxygen released through photosynthesis lets Amau live in a natural oxygen bar. But the treehouse's floor space was just too small. Even stretching in the morning was difficult. To solve this problem, Amau decided to build a terrace. This way, when the weather is nice, he can sit outside and enjoy coffee. Amau collected many evenly sized logs. Judging by his confident stride, he roughly planned the terrace dimensions. Then he began immersive digging work. The ground in early spring is quite moist, which made digging much easier for Amau. He quickly dug 2 foundation pits, each about half a meter. Then he inserted logs into the pits to serve as main supports. He also filled them with stones to ensure the supports were stable enough. He even tightly secured them with layers of reinforcement inside and out. Once that was done, he tightly tied 2 beams to a large tree to form the frame of the terrace. The structure was similar to the treehouse foundation he had built before, with prior experience building frames and the help of his trusty drilling tool. This task was a piece of cake for Amau. He had it all under control. The spring breeze gently brushed against Amau's face, allowing him to work in a very comfortable state. He truly enjoyed this peaceful, immersive way of living. It didn't take long before Amau finished building the terrace floor. But having skipped breakfast, Amau was already starving, so he quickly started a campfire. Along the way, he couldn't help admiring the wooden house he had built with his own hands. As the flames blazed strongly, they seemed to symbolize Amau's outdoor life, getting better and better. He skewered several juicy, plump small fish. As the saying goes, high-quality ingredients and require only the simplest cooking. He seasoned them with various spices for marination, then placed them on the charcoal fire for roasting. It only took about 2.5 hours. He had to keep flipping them to avoid burning. Then he could sit down and enjoy the delicious feast. After lunch, the relaxed atmosphere naturally made one sleepy. Amau inflated his air mattress, shed all his exhaustion, and drifted into a peaceful nap. By the time Amau woke up, it was already 2:30 in the afternoon. He felt groggy and lethargic after waking up, unable to summon any energy. So, he quickly made himself a cup of coffee. It must be said, after drinking the coffee, Amau felt completely recharged. He finished laying the remaining floorboards. However, due to poor planning earlier, the last board seriously interfered with the normal opening of the door, so Amau had to remove it again. Saw off the excess part and reinstall the door. Of course, the terrace wasn't fully complete yet. He still needed to add safety measures to prevent falling off at night when going to the bathroom. Though it wasn't high, Amao didn't want to risk slipping and falling. Once the terrace railing was completely installed, his little home was officially complete. He even added a simple latch to the front door. Now, Amao could finally live peacefully in the wild, on this small piece of land he called his own. In this pure, tranquil place of his, free from the influence of others, he could enjoy a quiet and blissful life, like a king. 2 years and 6 months ago, Amao built the first home of his life. After all this time, he returned to this familiar place once again, to relive old memories. The forests of California still carried a bit of chill in the air. The tree branches were draped in pure, misty dew. Amao assembled his drilling tool and drilled a hole into the center of a log. He planned to make a simple stove for boiling water and cooking. He also drilled holes on the side of the log to ensure enough oxygen for the fire to burn properly. This type of stove is not only convenient, but also burns efficiently. To warm himself up faster, Amao made a cup of coffee for himself. He even inserted a pinch of pine needles into the spout. This gave the coffee a refreshing aroma. He recommends that everyone try this, if you get the chance. The weather was excellent today. Instead of being lazy, Amao stayed productive. He prepared in advance for the coming winter. With ample supplies, he went back into the forest to collect more pine wood. He planned to reinforce the roof of his cabin once more. After removing the bark from the pine wood, it can be fixed onto the beams to serve as the roof's framework. Previously, the roof only had a waterproof layer. Considering future cold snowstorms, Amao could only enhance the roof stability by adding more structural beams. Looking at the orderly arrangement of the framework, it's believed the treehouse will have excellent load-bearing capacity. The forest weather is always unpredictable. It might change drastically in the next second. Amao must speed up his work. He nailed a circle of pine wood around the roof, which also helps reinforce the waterproof part of the roof. To improve the insulation of the cabin, Amao collected a sack of moss from the ground near his home. Now, he can evenly spread it flat across the rooftop. Although its insulation is not as good as thermal cotton, this free moss is abundant and renewable, always available. Plus, with a warm fireplace inside later on, it shouldn't be too cold during winter. After finishing this task, Amao fixed several wooden stakes on the veranda. This not only stabilizes the structure, but also prevents falls when going out at night, to some extent ensuring Amao's personal safety. Busy times always pass quickly. It was already lunchtime. Amao lit a bonfire. The smoke from the fire added a touch of life to the forest. Today's lunch was a fine piece of beef. Amao took out his portable seasonings and marinated the beef thoroughly from all angles, completely seasoned. While waiting for it to marinate, Amao planned to build a rotating grill. Barbecuing greatly enhances the aroma of beef. He first sharpened one end of the steak, then drilled holes on the side. He made for such holes in total, allowing temperature adjustment by levels. Then he sharpened the wooden stick, so it could easily fit into the drilled holes. Finally, he added a rotating shaft, creating a functional rotating barbecue grill. Now, he could skewer the well-marinated beef. He also tied it securely with hemp rope, so that it would rotate more easily during cooking. Amao also fried some potato chips, along with broccoli and tomatoes. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, with snowflakes faintly drifting in the air. Amao frowned and struggled to boil some water. He then gathered some wild berries and blueberries nearby and placed them into the boiling water to provide a good source of vitamins. Now he could return to the warm cabin and enjoy this hearty lunch. After eating and drinking his fill, it was still snowing coldly outside. Now Amao could rest assured. The next day, the snow finally stopped, but it was still bitterly cold outside. This forced Amao to fix the drafty walls. The linen he worked hard to weave earlier, he could only tear it down with a heavy heart. Luckily, this time he had brought thermal cotton. He stuffed it into all the gaps in the walls. The dried moss also needed replacing. He filled every gap with insulation cotton to ensure no air or moisture leaks in. Once all the gaps were filled with insulation cotton, then Amau could spend the winter warmly and comfortably. After completing all this, he chose a tree near his home. Since it was already dead, Amau was able to cut it down easily with his saw. He sawed it into small sections and stacked them under the treehouse. The next day quickly arrived. Amau's treehouse blended perfectly with the snowy forest, appearing peaceful and serene. After waking up, Amau installed a thermometer at the front door. Even though the snow wasn't heavy, the temperature still dropped to -10 degrees. To better withstand the severe cold, Amau decided to lay solid wood flooring indoors. To facilitate the upcoming work, he first made himself a measuring stick. This made it easier for him to cut the wood he had collected, logs, into flat boards to be used as flooring. At this point, the outside temperature had dropped to -20 degrees. Although the process was very exhausting, thinking of his warm little home, Amau persevered through the hard work alone. He continued step by step until he could nail the boards one by one onto the ground. Although the boards looked very rough, they were all handcrafted by Amau himself. Just this alone already makes him far more genuine than fake wilderness bloggers. Although the process didn't look difficult, in reality, it took Amau a lot of time and effort. Luckily, the work was done indoors, which was much more comfortable than working outside. Amau spent a full 2.5 days to complete laying the entire floor. Days went by, and the whole forest was blanketed in snow. It looked so beautiful. Amau made a shelf to store small items for daily use. As the weather had become unbearably cold, Amau finally brought out the fireplace he had bought last year. The fireplace's exhaust outlet was on the side wall, which made installation much easier. Before placing the fireplace, he had to install heat-resistant foil on the sidewall. Otherwise, the high temperature from the fire could easily ignite the wooden walls around it. Amau didn't want all his days of hard work to go up in smoke. With the fireplace fully installed, Amau quickly chopped some firewood by nightfall and stacked it in the corner. Then he lit the warm fireplace. Watching the warm glow, Amau stared blankly for a long, long time. To celebrate the completion of his new home, Amau prepared a hearty selection of ingredients to reward himself properly. Today, Amau will teach you how to make a delicious dinner. Sauté beef and onions in hot oil to bring out their aroma. Then add a spoonful of broad bean paste and stir it thoroughly. Add salt and chicken bouillon for flavor. Then pour in purified water to cover the ingredients. For side dishes, Amau prepared diced potatoes and fresh peas. Mix everything well. Cover the pot and simmer for 2.5 hours. While waiting, Amau hung up for kerosene lamps at the entrance to make the home look even more cozy. The indoor temperature reached 30 degrees. That's a 50-degree difference from outside. Amau's dinner was finally cooked. If you ask me, everything was perfect. Just a bowl of millet rice would make it even better. 3.5 years ago, Amau built the first home of his life. There, he spent his loneliest, but also most enjoyable winter. To relive those beautiful memories, Amau quit his job that supported his living expenses and returned during this beautiful weather to take a look. Crossing the wooden bridge he once built, he reunited with an old friend he hadn't seen in a while. This place held many memories in his mind. Amau joyfully opened the cabin door. Everything looked as familiar as ever. Every item in the cabin evoked scenes from the past. This time back, Amau planned to build a fence around the cabin. The forest still had abundant timber, so it was easy for him to collect some materials. He placed them on the workbench, then assembled a drilling tool. Each log only needed 2 holes drilled. After sharpening one end, he could drive it into the ground as part of the fence. To connect to upright posts, Amau carved tenon ends on both sides of the logs, creating a connector. He then aligned the tenon joints for connection. Due to slight gaps, the frame was still unstable. So Amao tied them tightly with hemp rope to secure them firmly. After getting a set of wooden stakes, the logs can be placed on top to form a fence. As the saying goes, the first step is the hardest. After gaining some experience, the rest of the fence can be built by simply following the template. Amao works very efficiently. It didn't take long to finish the fence. As for making the gate, Amao first carved grooves into short logs using a chisel. After making the handles, he drilled holes with a puncher. On the other end, he made tenons. Amao made a pair of handles like this. After installing the posts, Amao used a similar method to make a rotating shaft. From that, he could then build the gate. During the entire process, Amao didn't use a single iron nail. Everything was made from solid wood. This method might be slower, but for Amao, solid wood, handcrafted from scratch, brings a much greater sense of achievement. Finally, he just had to insert the wood and the gate was completely finished. At this moment, a cold and gloomy rain began to fall. But under the rain, Amao's wooden house looked even cozier. After the rain lightened up a bit, Amao lit a campfire to dry his rain-soaked shirt. Seeing the strong flames, Amao decided to start dinner an hour early. He heated some oil in the pot and began frying the young chickens. He then added various side ingredients to enhance the flavor. It was clear that this meal was full of nutrients. After adding various seasonings, he poured in purified water. He then covered it and simmered for 2.5 hours. And that's how a delicious, nutritious, and flavorful chicken stew was made. It's Amao's favorite. He really enjoys being able to eat such a satisfying dish when he's extremely hungry. A taste of true gourmet happiness. After eating and drinking, Amao deflated their mattress, slipped into his sleeping bag, and enjoyed a sweet afternoon nap. In the afternoon, the sky cleared up. After his nap, Amao felt fully recharged. Living in the wild, clean water is a challenge that must be solved. Amao sought a hollow stump from a dead tree and used a chisel to expand the inner space. He planned to make a water bucket to make carrying and storing water easier. After cleaning out the inside, Amao traced a plan around the inner edge of the stump. He then trimmed the excess wood and inserted it in. And with that, he had the bottom of the bucket. But there were still gaps between the wood and stump, so it couldn't hold water. But there are always more solutions than problems. Pine resin, for example, is a natural sealant. Just melt it over a fire, and it can be used to fill the gaps. Now, he had a fully sealed wooden bucket. Next, Amao tied 3 logs together, which formed a tripod when opened. He planned to make a water filter. At different heights, he attached layers of material. The first layer had pebbles to filter out large debris. The second layer was fine soft sand, followed by some grass. The final layer was charcoal, which has excellent absorption properties. It can absorb tiny bacteria and impurities. Amao also preheated several stones in the fire. He would later use them to boil water. Then Amao drew water from a stream nearby and poured it into the filter. Worried the water wasn't fully filtered, Amao filtered it a few more times. Now the water was much cleaner. Finally, he threw in the red-hot stones. The stones were hundreds to over 1,000 degrees. It only took a few to make the water boil. Oh my god, look at these guys. Swirl it around in the cup, and after letting it sit, it's safe to drink. Happiness in the wilderness is just that simple. And there are many things that make Amao happy. When he's bored, he inflates his kayak and paddles out on the water, found a suitable spot, then cast a line again. The joy of fishing isn't about how much you catch. It's about the process of fishing itself. Amao had pretty good luck this time, because this time, he didn't go home empty-handed as this mandarin fish looks quite cute. Amao admired it for a while, but that's not the most important part. The most important thing is the tender, delicious looks meat. Like tonight's dinner is secured. Just sprinkle some fine salt on it. Fry it in an oil pan. Add some onions and potatoes as side dishes. And just like that, a taste of wilderness romance is ready to serve. Taking advantage of the weekend break, Amao brought many household items from home. Of course, the most important was this accessory. After all, boiling water the old-fashioned way is inconvenient. Amao climbed the ladder and installed the chimney for the fireplace. to better enjoy cabin life. Mao decided to furnish the cabin. He split the logs with a hatchet, but they still weren't flat enough to use as boards. Luckily, he brought a planer, which made smoothing out then even with a breeze. He then drilled holes into the sides, shaved wooden pegs from vertical sticks, inserted them into the holes, and joined the boards together, effectively expanding the surface. With boards like these, Mao made another one with nails, and mounted it near the window as a table. After smoothing it, it's perfect for dining or tea time. Mao also mounted a shelf on the wall, useful for storing axes, and it adds a decorative touch to the room. It's been raining lately, and the cold caves have dropped the forest temperature to just a few degrees. So Mao chopped some firewood, and neatly stored it under the table. Near his home, many cattails grow by the water. Mao collected a bunch. Once fluffed, they become soft plant fiber. Part of it was stuffed between wall gaps to block the cold wind from seeping in. Another part he sewed into a fabric pouch and stuffed it full. That became a soft pillow to improve the comfort of sleeping at night. The cold forest air was dispelled by the roaring fire in the fireplace. The rising smoke from cooking also brought life back to this cozy home. To make cooking easier, Mao splurged on a barbecue oven. He couldn't wait to test it. So, he rolled out a dough sheet, mixed his favorite sauce, and spread it evenly on the dough. Then sprinkled cheese over it, along with sausage and vegetables. He put it in the oven. Next, what Mao had to do was feed oxygen to the fireplace to increase the heat. Half an hour later, a delicious, tempting pizza was ready. Mao was very pleased with his cooking skills. After eating, he felt completely satisfied. Mao locked the door securely and hid inside his safe and cozy little cabin. Snuggled close to the warmth of the fireplace, he let go of all his fatigue and drifted into a restful sleep.